Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Society with Barrister Fatma Shaheen. As we all know, the idea of beauty is something that has been evolving for the longest time. But thankfully, beauty today is more inclusive than ever before. How we perceive anybody's beauty, what we deem to be beautiful, is indeed a reflection of our values. And what we deem to be fashionable by that yardstick is how we want to be perceived and how in turn we want others to perceive us. This and much more we'll be talking about in our today's show. We'll be telling you how have the definitions of beauty, fashion, attractiveness changed in the Pakistani society, that too in COVID-19 times. And we'll also be deliberating upon the fact that is fashion the armor to help you survive your everyday blues in life? And to do that, let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Dr. Kamran Izhar Qureshi Saab, who is a cosmetic aesthetic dermatologist. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Fatma.
You're most welcome, sir. Alongside him, I have Miss Annie Shoaib, who's a fashion journalist and she's also a fashion designer. Assalamu alaikum, Annie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And via Zoom, we'll be joined by Miss Hifza Khan, who's a celebrity beautician. Assalamu alaikum, Hifza, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Fatma. Walaikum assalam.
I would like to start the show with you, Hifza. I think at the very outset, it's very important for us to understand that when we talk about beauty, especially beauty of women, how has it evolved in Pakistan in the past few decades? Because we all know that the idea of beauty of a woman, what it was maybe 20 years ago, is not so today in COVID times.
I think, Fatma, beauty now is, yes, it is physical, it's what you see, but our generation, as you have said in the last 10 years, has become more confident. And it's their confidence that makes them more beautiful. So I think now beauty has nothing to do with being white. Beauty is to do with how I look, how I groom myself, how I perceive my skin as my asset. And now girls are more focused on a healthy skin rather than a white skin, and they're more focused on looking more groomed as compared to the perception of beauty in the last decade. So for me, beauty is more about her confidence, more about her accepting herself as she is.
Hifza, that's very rightly put by you, but then there's still this strata of Pakistani women out there who go to, beauticians like you in order to become fair, especially on their wedding days. They have this obsession of, appearing fair and looking beautiful. So how do you justify that? I think that's something that will always, unfortunately, remain in Pakistan.
I think, Fatma, now what I am dealing with is their demand for not becoming white. 90% of the girls who come to me, they want to stick to their own natural complexion. They keep telling me, don't put heavy base, keep me to my skin color. They understand. And thankfully, a certain portion of men now also understand the reality, and a certain percentage, yes, still want white women. So that's a low percentage now. But a higher percentage will accept women in their own color. And it's a big demand from me, from my bride, to keep them natural, which is great, because I think I've been working for the last 10 years plus, and the demand for becoming white was more than it is now.
Right, Hifza, and I think in this regard, we also have to give due credit to the modeling industry of Pakistan, which for once has actually also started accepting dark-skinned models in that way. But Dr. what would you want to say to that? Because I know a lot of women do come to you wanting to appear white and, have that lightening of that complexion.
I would beg to differ a little bit with what definitely Hifza is telling from her experience. But that's the bride, that's the skin tone which she's coming with, and she wants something to be done on that particular day. What we are facing as a challenge right now is glutathione injections.
Right.
And the kind of queries that we get every day for glutathione for whitening, and I wouldn't be quoting the names, but there are some, they are quoting this model, that actor, and they're saying that how have they become white? So and there are fair girls who come and they say, we want to get white. And the biggest query that
do men have this phobia of being white as well?
Yes, they do.
I wouldn't be surprised, because I think it's something which really does still, it's very heavily ingrained in our society, unfortunately. I think the proportion might have decreased, Doctor, but it's still there.
The thing is that because they wanted to change the perception of the people.
Which I think is very welcoming, but I think at the outset we need to understand that, whereas these things are good because they are actually trying to reach out to the masses and to tell them that, this is their vision about their brand, that they don't draw any any line of distinction between fair-skinned people or dark-skinned people, but I think that mindset, that needs to change. I would want you to comment on this, you know, since we are talking about changing definitions of beauty. I think it's only fair to take your narrative too, because you are a fashionista, you keep a very, you know, keen eye on changing fashion trends. How has the body image for both men and women evolved over a period of time? And by body image, I mean, who would be perceived to be the, you know, the perfect person that way, with the perfect physique?
Yeah, I think in past few years, that phenomena of being the perfect body and just look like just prim and proper for being a model or anything, I think it has changed a bit, because the famous international brands have changed their models into like a little heavier on side. Like Gucci has hired a really like a big size model for them, and it created a lot of hype in it. So I think Pakistan, maybe it has been changing a lot, because
you yourself have been doing campaigns with women who are a bit plump.
Exactly. I did the shoot for my clothing line, and they were just like normal ladies with like a normal body figure, not like a very like size 0, I would call it.
And I think that's the new thing now, because I think in COVID, one thing that we've learned is, actually from my perspective, that the new thing is the healthy skinny. It's just not being skinny to the size of 0. But I think this is very healthy too, because even if you study history and you see how evolution has come into play, people have now started accepting women to be, you know, healthy only if they appear healthy. Now, I'm not saying fat or, you know, plump for that matter, but I think there is more inclusivity in that regard.
As far as they look nice and fresh and more confident. I think for me, beauty is like whatever you endorse and whatever you are like feel like comfortable in it, and you feel confident.
And then I think the culture and society also have a role to play, because in China we see that women with smaller feet are considered to be very beautiful and very pretty, but there's nothing of this sort here in Pakistan. So it also varies, you know, which country you belong to, what kind of a culture you have. But Hifza, coming to you, what would you say is the most definitive factor in defining the definition of beauty in any society? Is it culture? Is it media? It's just a matter of evolution.
I think media is the driving force, which our men see models as the most perfect, in the most perfect forms, right? As far as your body is concerned, your facial features are concerned. So we are giving the wrong perception, because nothing is perfect. You see, less to be realized. And when we say that I want a perfect bride, you know, because there are two ways the society looks at. One where people are okay with the skin colors and the way their brides look, and with one section of the society wanting the brides to be fair and perfect. So that is influenced by media. Now, because we are showing that perfect woman on screen. So that's what they want. Less to be realized that there are 100 designers dressing her up, and they have permanent makeup artists, and they have people who are grooming them. So are we providing, if you give any woman or any girl that same facility, she's going to come out the same. So do they realize how much effort it takes to come to that look?
And also, I think, Hifza, things have changed, especially in COVID times, because generally I see women more confident in their own skin now, probably because I think the shift has now changed to skin care and hair care rather than wearing elaborate makeups, because, you know, it's been a lifestyle change. When you don't have any places to go out to, when you don't have many GTs or parties to attend, automatically, you know, you're de-stressing yourself in a different way. Would you agree?
I agree with that, because, you know, we all had a lot of time. So we started looking at our hair more closely. Our skins, our husbands were at home, our males were at home. And, you know, we were like, oh my God, no, they're not going anywhere either. So yes, a lot of focus came onto the skin and to the hair. And one very unfortunate thing we saw during COVID times, that people who got COVID and the people who didn't get COVID all lost hair. So there was a lot of hair loss. And I think a lot of it is attributed to the stress they were getting during those COVID times, because of the, you know, somebody getting unwell in the family, or the fear of being unwell, or what's going to happen. So a lot of focus went on hair care. I'm sure there was a lot of hair products got sold like anything.
Dr. Saab, coming to you, I think it's very important for us to talk about men's fashion too. And since you're the only male panelist we have on board today, I would want to draw your narrative on this. I know that we all women we are very conscious on the way we look, and, you know, we have to get our routine facials or whatever it is done in order to look good and, you know, to be tip top. But what about men? How do you see men coming to doctors like yourself in order to look good?
In fact, the total thing has changed now. Previously, men were the ones who used to come for the beauty things and everything. They were looked down on, if I would say, from the society or the culture perspective, but that has changed now. Fitness is too much in right now. Younger boys, they are going to gyms, they are trying to look after themselves, and then we get a lot of hair removal requests from,
men
men,
as well.
and they want to show their body cuts and everything.
But
And
I would want to think that these are the men who belong to the fashion industry somehow, like the models, or is it like the routine average Pakistani?
who are the routine average Pakistani following?
Who?
The
I
models,
think you would be in a better
the
position
models,
to define.
the models at times,
Right,
because the
right.
social media.
Models and actors and even a lot of male fashion bloggers
Yes,
now.
and in this COVID-19 time, which you've been talking about, what has happened is that social media has gotten a lot of responsibility on their hands, and
I think
has
it has
gone
also
a little
created
haywire.
the space for men to act. I think it has set the bar high, which was
Yeah.
there for us women before.
Yeah.
But Dr. Saab, what kind of treatments are they getting other than laser hair removals you're talking about?
Botox,
Botox, fillers, PRPs,
everything,
all the
PRPs.
treatments that women are getting.
Now, there was a time when men were only concerned about hair fall, and that was the only aesthetic procedure which would be selling towards men. Now it's changed. Now it's about how you look, how the jawline, defining the jawline, the fillers, the Botox, and everything.
And that has nothing to do with the fact as to what industry you belong to. Also, how do their reasons change? Like, I know women, if they want to go to a doctor like yourself, it could probably be because they are getting married, or maybe it's an anniversary that they have to attend, or it's a birthday function. But what about men? What are their reasons for coming to cosmetic aesthetic doctors like yourself?
Just looking good.
Just looking good.
Yeah,
That's about
that's
it.
about it.
So I think it's more of a lifestyle change
Yeah,
for
yeah,
men
yeah.
as it is for us
They
women.
have become very well aware, even though when it comes to suiting, the men's suiting has changed a lot. Like now they want to be like fitted pants, and like the height of the length of the blazer should be not that long. So boys and men's are like.
And also, I
totally-
think there's more focus on men wanting to have leaner bodies now.
Yes.
Which was not the case even if you see a few years ago. I
Exactly.
think all thanks to social media in that regard. But how do you see generically the shopping trends? How do you see wardrobe styling evolving in COVID times to what it was before COVID?
I think before COVID, it was just crazy. In my books, I think COVID was much needed. That would be mean to say, because the people were just going crazy. There was a lot of GTs, a lot of parties, and like shadiyan, and people were just like they want to look the best from everyone. So it was a total havoc. So I think this was much needed. People have gone much relaxed now. They feel like the value of the families and the close ones. Like we got scared to even hug your loved ones and everything like that. So I think
But is that
everything
something
has
any
changed.
that reflects on your clothes? Because if you don't have many parties to attend, you don't have many get-togethers to go to, at the end of the day, you're being very casual.
Yeah, I feel in this pandemic, a lot of casual loungewear designers have come up with very great
Right.
ideas. Now, very relaxed clothes, and people are really enjoying it rather than buying really formal clothing and like being always very prim and proper. So people are enjoying those loungewears and being casual. I think it's going the very in thing these days.
Right. But do you think, is this something that will remain any? Because, let's at least be positive that considering so many people are, getting vaccinated now, not only in Pakistan, all over the world, and we are hoping that there will be an end to this pandemic sometime soon. Do you think people will revert back to the pre-COVID dressing styles, or is this something that is going to be here for some time to come?
I think it will stay for some time, but people will definitely, if as far as Lahoris are concerned, they will definitely
Yeah, I
go back.
think coming to you, Hifza, would you want to add something to what Annie is saying?
I think, Fatima, this trend is going to change. We are all like our lounging dresses and we like to stay very casual. But as soon as this life is going to come back to normal, we are going to go back to ourselves that we were dressing up and going out and everything, because people are missing that too. But as far as the habit of skincare and hair care has improved in women and in men, I think that's going to stay. Either brides not dressing the same in Corona times. I think they were dressing the same because according to them, it was their wedding and it's going to be just one-time affair. So they wanted to dress up, they wanted to do makeup, they wanted to make clothes. So I didn't see anything changing with respect to that. There were very few girls who went for light dresses or a different kind of appearance, but mostly it stayed the same.
But what about the, average Pakistani woman out there? Since we are just not talking about the brides here, we are, trying to address the average common Pakistani woman. What do you think will be the makeup new trends now post-pandemic?
Well, I think Fatma is going to be more or less the same, because COVID has not changed much in terms of how women want to look. Every woman wants to look nice. She wants to look beautiful.
But Hifza, I'm saying that in the event that you're wearing a mask and you're going out and this is a lifestyle that you have adopted, would the makeup trends not change to reflect that?
Yeah, so yes, the makeup trends are going to change in terms of women have become very conscious on how their eyebrows are looking. So we have introduced the concept of eyebrow mapping, which means that eyebrows are definitely not twins and they're sisters. So we have introduced this eyebrow mapping where you get your perfect eyebrow done and your eye makeup is enhanced and they're more focused on eye makeup, obviously because your rest of the face is covered. Yes, that has changed. This is one change, yes, you can say is going to come, and it has come already, because otherwise we would never gone into such details of creating the perfect eyebrow.
Doctor, but what have been the changes in the cosmetic aesthetic industry? Because I think like any other industry, your industry has been impacted by COVID, both in positive and negative ways as well. So overall, how do you see this change?
I think both positive and negative, more positive
Than negative.
definitely. But one thing which I would like to add here is that during this COVID time, people have gone to social media a lot. And social media is a platform, fortunately or unfortunately, which is not in any control. So what has happened is that people have started following, and these are average people which we are talking about, who at times cannot afford to go for treatments and other things.
Exactly.
So
But
that
you know,
has
the good thing that I've seen, Doctor, I don't know about you, but about many other cosmetic aesthetic doctors, that they've started offering more discounts to people out there in order to engage them and to attract more customers.
well, that's a
during the
different-
COVID at least.
Well, that's a different debate altogether. It's every Tom, Dick, and Harry opening up a clinic kind of a thing. Even beauticians and I'm not talking about big like Hifza and others are big names.
Of course.
Uh,
We've had
so-
those
so-
stream of medical negligence cases. We've recently
Yes,
also seen in a
yes.
private hospital where a guard operated a woman and she died. But I think that's going a bit off tangent, the topic today.
no, I'll bring it back towards the topic
Yes,
which you were talking about. That look here now, what has happened is that because of these discounts and a lot of other things, what has happened is that we are going to go into a big problem in the future.
How so?
How so? Because low quality products being used, non-technical people using them,
Things going wrong.
things going wrong, and a lot of pressure which is created on the average person to look good, and not to the definition of looking good in the mirror, looking good in the other person's eyes.
I think any
Yeah.
sane person that way would say it's for your own self. But Dr. Saab, have you seen like a change in terms of the kind of people who are coming to you in COVID-19 times as opposed to what it was before? Because I do know a lot of people who were getting these aesthetic treatments, but now, you know, they've gone on the back foot and they say that it's too expensive. We can't afford it because it's a luxury, you know. And now, considering that we've had this cut and we are not perhaps as financially viable as we used to be, this is something we don't, you know, intend to prioritize.
I agree that that has become something which has been a concern for a lot of places, and that's why these discounts and a lot of other things are coming up. The thing is that the money which is there, and now where would you be spending that? Because a lot of people went into a layoff kind of a situation. The salaries were reduced for people also, so that has impacted.
That has impacted.
But overall, I've seen that there is a very big positive trend. People have become aware of
Like
things.
we were earlier discussing with Hifza, that, you know, considering that people are at home and they do have money to actually spend on themselves, they would rather prefer to look good, be it by going to doctors like yourself or to beauticians like Hifza. And what about you, Annie? How do you feel has the fashion industry been impacted by COVID-19?
Fashion industry has been impacted really bad, I must say. Only I think the big names, the big brands have survived during that pandemic. But the smaller designers, I think they went through a lot. And big names, I think, although they just survived because of their like big backing from their own. So I think pandemic was really bad for these people, and especially the people they get their work done from.
So basically you are saying that there has been this pool of fashion designers who've managed to thrive, and there have been this pool of fashion designers who've not managed to thrive. For that matter, they're merely managing to survive. So I think at the end of the day, a lot also matters on the fashion designers themselves. They have to understand how they are marketing themselves, Annie, because now I think in this COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of things have gone online. So a lot of people expect designers like yourself to market yourself very differently. Hifza, I think you would agree with me on that, because I think the same pressure falls on beauticians like yourself too.
We have suffered a lot in COVID times. I mean, you can't imagine how we retained our staff and we brought them down to 50% salaries, and we were focusing to stay afloat, pay our rents, pay our bills, and not lay off the staff. The only thing that helped us survive during this COVID time was that we told ourselves that we are going to do two things in this time. We're going to help our staff stay alive, and we are going to maintain our buildings, and that's all we are doing even now.
Which is great, because I think salons like yourself and beauticians like yourself, who are the trendsetters, a lot of people would look up to you in that regard. Which takes me to my next question, that I think in any industry all over the world, or in Pakistan for that matter, it's very important for it to be inclusive, and it's very important for it to be diverse. So how inclusive and diverse do you see the beauty industry of Pakistan, so to speak?
There is a low acceptance generally in society for dark-skinned women, right? But now things are changing, and the trends are changing. The men are becoming more acceptable. So I would say, yes, it is better now, as it was maybe 2 decades late before, and before that. So, and as far as you think of in terms of makeup products, so a lot of international brands have started making all this makeup for darker tones and for people like myself, and this is great, because these trends were not there initially.
So I think slowly and gradually we are making the beauty industry more inclusive. But my question still remains, Hifza, because I think catering to dark-skinned women is just one aspect of inclusivity. There are so many others, like perhaps catering to the transgenders when it comes to their beauty narratives, also in terms of the message that any brand wants to give across. So I think we need to actually understand what all does inclusivity entail. Doctors have spoken about how the definitions of beauty have evolved for both men and women, but what about the trans community of Pakistan? Do they come to aesthetic doctors like yourself?
Yes, they do.
And is this again frequent, or is this just a rare occurrence?
It is frequent, but they have some doctors whom they are going to. They do, they are not going to every clinic, but they have some doctors where there would be a lot of traffic of the transgender community, and they would be going in there. Now, why is it that some doctors? That's because of cultural and other reasons also. Because you see, we as a culture, as a society, we're not accepting
I was
them
about to say
as yeah. So what is happening is that when someone is coming to my clinic, let's say as an example, and all the people sitting in the waiting, they are looking at the transgender, and then they are labeling the doctor also that they are. So there
Which
are
is so
a lot
wrong.
of
They
things.
have as much as a right to look good as we women do, or
Yes.
as men like yourself do. But what are the most common cosmetic aesthetic treatments that they come to you for?
See, they come for lip fillers, they come for other things, Botox, whitening also.
So talking about plastic surgery, I think the most common kind of surgery that transgenders get is that of gender reassignment. So what challenges do doctors like yourself or your team face when you basically want to, actually change the gender of a transgender?
It's society, culture, the legal aspect, and then the religious aspect. So you have to look
But
at
sir,
it.
you're living in that society who's making it necessary for you to get a court order to be able to actually perform that procedure. So in some regard, I know you have a big heart that way. You're a kind, compassionate doctor. But a lot of doctors I know personally who have refused to take in transgender patients because they just feel that maybe this is not something that will be good for their impression or their repute.
No, Fatma, I'll beg to differ here.
Okay.
It's not the doctors who have refused. It's a system who has refused. Doctors have made an effort. Now, what is gender? And there's a brain sex, there's a body sex. Okay. Now, the person is thinking of a certain sex in the mind, and bodily has a different sex. Now, the Plastic Surgeon Society, they've made a big effort on this regard, which may not be in knowledge of a lot of people. And finally, what they got done was that 2 independent psychiatrists will give an opinion that this person has this brain sex and this is the body sex, and only then gender reassignment can be done. One.
Right. And you
Number
also
two,
need a court order to that.
that is, and then the court order, and then internationally also, how do you do a gender reassignment? You make them live for 2 years in the different clothes, and after that period has passed and the person
They are
has
able to
become
assess
comfortable,
their
they
sense
have
of
to,
identity.
yes,
I
their
understand
sense
that,
of
sir.
identity.
Like,
So,
I
yeah.
understand that, sir, but the thing is that, you know, regardless of this, I think system is made up of people like us, be it you, be it Annie, be it me. So at the end of the day, at least in my view, in my narrative, it's something which would be something very personal. But you know, coming to you, Annie, I think we're talking about inclusivity, be it in terms of treating transgenders and addressing their beauty concern, or be it, you know, with regards to the concerns that Hifza raised. I think in this regard, a very important concept is that of CSR, like corporate social responsibilities, which means basically is that what are designers like yourself doing to give back to the society. So in that regard, what all can you people do?
We all designers have a great responsibility by being participating in that. A lot of big names, I can't quote it here, but they have been contributing all that pandemic and helping the poor and the needy people. And as far as my thing is concerned, I have been helping out, getting married, few girls, and then putting out some water things and like that. I tried as far as I could do it in being part of that thing.
And also giving the poor people, especially your employees, their pays on time,
Yeah.
because a lot of times
I've
we see
heard that
designers
many
not doing
designers,
that.
all
a lot
that
of complaints have
last year, a
surfaced.
lot of designers didn't pay to their all their staff, but we tried our best to pay them all the year, although we were like thriving ourselves. But still we managed so that they can not, their household won't stop and their basic needs are being.
Annie, you've told us about the CSR efforts that you've done practically yourself amidst this COVID-19 pandemic, but we also need to give due credit to the efforts of other fashion designers, be it HSY, be it Maria B, or even for that matter, beauticians like Musarat Misbah. So how do you analyze the efforts of these designers trying to make a positive change in the Pakistani society?
Yeah, I think they left a very good impact because I think they had a good responsibility over their head since they are such big names. So I think it was really needed from their side, which mostly people don't, they overlook, like why should we do that? Our life is good, so let it be like that.
And the most interesting thing is, Annie, that they were the ones who actually made the kickstart. Like Maria B is one of the first few designers in Pakistan who volunteered that she would produce 1,000 masks a day. And in that regard, there was this designer whose name I've forgotten, who volunteered for the first time that they would also produce PPEs. When you remember last year, there was a dearth of the same. So, you know, such things coming from the fashion industry of Pakistan, giving back to the society, something which must be truly appreciated. Hifza, you've also done your share of CSR. Tell us more about that.
When I started the salon business, and I had my people bringing these girls to me that please train them, and we don't want to keep them with us in the brick lanes. And you see the literacy rate in Pakistan is only 47%, and our women are only like, you know, hardly 50% of them are literate. So they kept bringing these girls to me from brick lanes, from girls who had not gone to school, from girls who had never seen what a school looked like, and they started dropping them at my doorstep. So I had no choice but to train them. And eventually I started realizing there is a big need for somebody to get up and start giving these women more empowerment and to make them be able to be more effective part of the society. So over a period of these years that I've been working, so one of few of my best hairstylists are girls who used to make bricks, and some of them used to work in houses, and now they have such amazing technical skills, and they are empowered, and they're able to have their own life and to have their own say. And I think this is what I'm giving back to the society. And in terms of me having the desire to open a school to give free education to women, to girls who
which is commendable, Hifza, because I think this leaves your brand not only in a good, positive light, but it also, you know, motivates other brands to follow lead in that regard. But I think a very important question which we must touch upon is the fact that how can we, you know, ensure that we strengthen, we enhance the current beauty and fashion industry of Pakistan. So in that regard, as a senior beautician, what would your recommendations be?
Actually, when you say that more than 50% of the population is women and only 50% out of them are literate, so what are you going to do with the rest of that force? You need to give them technical training, because I can't send them back to schools, I can't send them back to colleges, but they can be technical trained, and we have trained them, and we have seen beautiful results. I mean, these girls who came to me from Blicknens, their family no longer make bricks. They are all have now a respectable position in the society, and so on and so forth. I mean, our responsibility and to give back to the society as far as the beauty industry is concerned, to train more people. And for that same reason, I dream to have a school where I impart free education to these deserving girls, and to, you know, to make them more able.
What proposals would you want to give to the current government when it comes to enhancing, when it comes to strengthening the fashion and the beauty industry of Pakistan?
Yeah, so government, the good thing the government has done about it is that they've at least started registering the salon. So acknowledging them as an industry, which is great, because that's step one. So all the salons need to get themselves registered, and they need to pay the taxes, which is totally understandable, because this is what is our part. And the government needs to understand our needs for training. They need to give us subsidies. They need to understand that a large portion of these women which are not literate need to become useful members. So for me, I look for subsidies, I look for training, I look for assistance from the government. I also, you see, they started this initiative, which was great, where they were coming to salons and checking on the sterilization of the facility that has been provided to the clients, because you see, we can become detrimental in this aspect of self.
And I think it keeps that pressure alive on you know, people like yourself to deliver to the best of your abilities. But Dr. Saab, I think your narrative is also very important on this, because you also are a public policy expert. So do you think we need a policy on this? Because to my knowledge, we don't have one coherent, one cogent, one consolidated policy on the fashion and the beauty industry of Pakistan, how it should be dealt with, how it can be enhanced. For that matter, we don't even have councils, fashion councils here like we have in the UK.
Industry needs to be regularized. And as Hifsar very rightly said, that subsidy should be given to those who are contributing back towards the society in general, and to the women in particular. So that they need to give them subsidy.
Right.
Now, if we divide all into three, the fashion and the aesthetics or cosmetics and the beauty side, so everyone has to have their own registered bodies who are laying down the SOPs that need to be followed, and they need to be registered. It cannot be, see, Hifsa will bear me out here, that in the wrong hands, a beautician who would be applying some chemical on the face can do the biggest
I think
problem.
that responsibility lies on you too, because if you put in a wrong injection,
No,
then you can completely disfigure somebody's face and their perception of beauty.
Fatma, I have seen burns with mehndi. See, the problem is,
we need to regularize this industry.
I'm a regularized industry. As a doctor,
of course,
I fall
I was
into
just joking,
yeah. But the thing is that I've seen so many mehndi burns.
Even
During this, the facials.
yeah.
So the industry needs to be regularized. The government needs to, because then that it puts a pressure on the clinics, on the salons.
I think that way the bar is set higher. I think you would want to say something to this
yes,
as a fashion designer on the panel.
Because globally, I think fashion industry has been really backed up by the government. But sadly, it's not the case in Pakistan. And here you can just see only the big brands can just flourish, and they're opening more stores because they can. But for the smaller brands and the smaller designers, I think government needs to put on some intention towards
I think
them
perhaps
as
maybe
well.
reducing the sales tax would also help people
Yes,
like yourself.
definitely.
Because
people used to buy clothes,
yes.
and when they saw there is a tax on the, and then they just looked the slip and the receipt and like, what is this? We are not going to pay for it. And initially that happened, and that created a lot of
And I think
trouble
also
for
in
us.
this regard, the retail sector, the retail industry, that in itself needs to be developed as well, because you know that is the backbone of so many other industries, fashion, beauty, even otherwise in that way. So I think they need to be there's still a lot of potential, but there's still a lot of potential, you know, here in order to you know, strengthen and to enhance the industry, so to
For
speak.
fashion, there is a full linked thing going on behind it. there's a lot of manpower behind it. There's not only a one-man show.
And we need to actually appreciate and acknowledge the efforts of those who are doing
Yes,
it, because
exactly.
I think here in Pakistan we have a lot of talent. My recommendation would be to streamline that young talent out there, especially that which is doing all the necessary work. Like if you see all these Multani housewives, they are so good at making
All
these
that
shadow
hard
work
work,
jodas
And if we sell
chicken
this
curry
out-
jodas,
Yeah.
which are actually, which have also helped Pakistan garner itself in a very nice and in a positive way abroad. So I think these are the things that we need to work on and we need to streamline. But coming to you, Hifza, and coming towards the conclusion of the show, you know, I would want you to tell all of us before we conclude the show, that what is that one thing which you as a beautician find universally beautiful, universally attractive? Because we all know that beauty at the end of the day is very subjective. What your definition of beauty might be, might not be my definition.
Fatma, I think one thing I want to convey through your forum is, and I will come back to the definition of beauty, is that beauty is a $3.4 trillion industry globally, right? And the government makes huge, incomes out of that. And Pakistan needs to focus on it as well to first, acknowledge it as an industry, and also to get benefits out of it and to give benefits to it at the same time. I mean, the stigma attached to the beauty industry, or when I came into it, to my father saying no to it, my father-in-law saying no to it, and everybody rejecting the idea of me coming into the beauty industry, first we need to get that over. Right. Yes, it is an industry. The educated people have to come in this to make it a better place. We, people like us, need to come in it to give empowerment to those 50% of the population that is still not literate, right? So it's a huge industry. And so this is the message I want to give to the government, to kindly understand the potential of this industry as an overall perspective. Right. And what is beautiful to me is Fatma, is the idea of beauty for every person is different. For me, it is how I look is important, because I'm not talking about internal beauty. I'm talking about how I look externally. You need to look healthy. You need to have a healthy skin. You need to have all the things that make you look fresh, that makes you look the same color. Maybe if I can put myself more clearly, is that you need to have a uniform color rather than having a fair color. You need to be eating healthy. You need to look healthy. Your hair needs to look healthy. I mean, how much can I layer you with makeup? How much can I layer your hair
with? And at the end of the day, Hifza, I think it's all about your mindset. If you feel that you're beautiful, then you are beautiful. I think for me, at least, beauty is all about confidence. It's all about intelligence that way. Dr. Saab, what would your definition of beauty be, since a lot of people come to you to beautify themselves?
My definition of beauty is very simple. It's how you feel. The feeling has to be good. It has to come from within, inside. And definitely what Hifza said, a healthy body, a healthy mind.
But a lot of people who get a lot of these treatments, they feel that they're very beautiful, although maybe by my perception they might not be. They might be very super skinny. They might have, very sharply sculpted faces, which in my perception is not beautiful.
But a healthy mind.
Right.
See, if your mind is healthy, and if you are not bothered from anyone else, whatever they are saying and whatever they are doing, so definitely the concept of beauty has to be from within inside, and that has to be your mind.
Of course, because at the end of the day, I think it's that inner beauty which will captivate others, and the outer beauty is something which will merely attract. What is your definition of beauty? What is your definition of fashion? Because I think fashion itself is also a very ever-evolving concept. And what is that message that you would want to give to the viewers out there?
I think fashion industry has a lot of power for being on the beauty thing, because as far as I'm concerned, as my product, I don't sell a product, I sell a lifestyle. So on which you can just feel confident, whatever you're owning, you're wearing, you just feel like you own it, and confidently. Like everything has gone like very practical these days, and people should like feel comfortable in their own skin.
What would your concluding message be in this regard, especially when it comes to the fashion industry of Pakistan? How do you see it evolving, and what is the message that you want to give to everybody out there as regards, being fashionable, and what it means to be fashionable at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think fashion has a lot of capacity to show the people that how beautiful you are, because you need to be comfortable in your skin and you need to be really confident. Like I sell my product like just not as a product, I sell it as a lifestyle. Like you can choose, you can pick and choose anything, the fabric, the thread, the button, everything will be according to you. So if you are confident on your choice, so you will look definitely beautiful.
And I think fashion inherently also has that ability to inspire others. It's
Yeah.
all, you know, how you use it, and it's a very good communication tool as well, at least in my opinion. Your point is noted, but on that note, I would like to conclude the show. Thank you so much, Hifza, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Fatma, for calling us over. It was lovely sharing our views. It was amazing how you took our perspective on this industry. And thank you so much. And we're hoping to see you again soon.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamran, and thank you so much, Annie, for being here with us today. Well, to conclude today's show, I think one thing that has repeatedly come up in the discussion again and again, and something that I would also want to stress upon, is the fact that beauty at the end of the day is something very subjective. What I might find beautiful is something that you might not find beautiful, but we need to accept the fact that beauty, despite being subjective, is something that comes in all shapes, in all sizes, and we need to really understand this as a society, that whereas outer beauty is something that can be attractive to the eye, it is actually inner beauty which captivates the other. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.